really liked the beginning. I wanted to ask about that text at the beginning. It's kind of meta. It says there's been 7 violent attacks since you started watching this film. I thought that was such a cool way to get the viewer on edge. So can you kind of speak to that decision? I loved it.
Like we were looking up stats to put on those cards, frankly, and doing a bunch of research. And literally the 36 point, the whole thing about how many seconds and how often it happens, that's literally, with the runtime, we did the math, there had been by the point we get to that point in the film. And so we were like, let's just point it out to everybody, right? Like, because to really bring it home that guess what? This is happening all the time, because it feels like no time, right? That you've been watching the film at that point, and yet you see that and it just, like you said, sinks in. So that's where it came from.
Yeah, just shivers watching that. And this isn't a slasher. There's not like death after death, but this is tense all the way through. What was kind of the biggest goal with chapter one, and as a horror film?
I mean, the goal with chapter one, you've heard the story. It's a giant script, right? So it's a 289-page script we wrote because we're insane. And like literally when it's 3 chapters, because it's too long all as one thing, but it's one big story we were telling. So it's not literally this, but a script takes a 3-act structure, as you know. Literally chapter 1 is act 1, chapter 2 is act 2, chapter 3 is act 3. Really, part of chapter 3 is a bit of act 2, right? So that's what it is. It's the setup, and we wanted to start where the original Stranger started, because that was the setup and where our story delves further into who's behind the mask without taking away, I've been asked this, so I'll just say it up front, the mystery of it at all. So when we go into that, they don't give you a speech, they don't suddenly start talking, they don't do that. We maybe let you see some of the other kills that they've done. We maybe go back into time, and through watching some of that, you get more insight into who these people are. Because again, we're a parallel sort of storyline to the original, if you will. But we, wanted to get behind the mask, and we wanted to really get into the mind of a victim that survives and is continuing to be pursued. And if that was happening to you for 3 or 4 days, and you were locked in an environment that you couldn't get out of legitimately, and these people were toying with you and ultimately gonna kill you, what would that do to you? And literally what would that do to you? And we spend the time to actually go through it with that protagonist, as we also get to learn in a very clever way a little bit more about our antagonists as well. So we've got a very much of a balance of this going on, where you're on this journey, and really, what happens is the horror, to what you were just saying. The suspense and the tension and the intensity, it's even more in movie 2, weirdly. And it's a completely different movie, but it's a completely different movie. Like, you'll be refreshingly pleased that when you go in, you're like, oh my God, they just kept going on this journey, and they applied the sort of baseline that they did in movie 1 to this, and then took me somewhere new.